Now let's talk about the science. If the goal is to function and heal at 100%, we can have no pressure on the brainstem or spinal cord. We need to know, how do we know if there's pressure on the spinal cord, and how do we fix it if we find it? Number one is we need to know that from front to back, our spine should be perfectly straight. From the side, we actually need these three curves in our spine. Specifically, we need this curve in the neck. Super important, because when the neck has the right curve in it, there's going to be no pressure or stretch on your spinal cord. Let me show you what that looks like. So this is going to be a neck, by the way, facing this way. If y'all would, by the way, in your seats, take your hand, you're going to appreciate this, and turn it into the perfect curve of the neck. So the reason we're turning our hand into the perfect curve of the neck is because in this position, your spinal cord, which runs behind these vertebrae, is going to be loose. So how does the skin feel on your hand right now? It feels nice and loose, right? So your spinal cord is nice and loose. The messages you can get from the brain down the spinal cord, out the body to the nerves. That's great. The problem is when we lose that curve in the neck. How do we lose the curve in the neck, Dr. Ben? Whiplash. Any type of whiplash, you're going to lose the curve in your neck. And we think to ourselves like, well, I've never been in any major whiplashes. First of all, you probably have, you may or may not remember it. But a big whiplash doesn't have to be a giant car accident, right? It can be, it can be a little fender bender, slips and fall on the ice, fall down the stairs. Too much time, you can have a micro whiplash, which is too much time on your computer. Basically, that's the same thing as a whiplash because you wind up stretching the ligaments and training them forward. Maybe some of you spend a little too much time on your telephone, and we get this forward whiplash. Well, when we do that, we're going to talk about the ligaments later, but we wind up straightening the neck. This is a real big problem. So if you would, take your hand again. We want the spinal cord to be nice and loose like your skin, but look what happens if you lose the curve in your neck. What's the skin on your hand feel like now? All right, it's tight, it's stretched. Well, research shows that your spinal cord that's sitting back here, your poor little spinal cord, when that happens, it thins it out in the middle and stretches it. Research shows that when your neck goes from here to here, it stretches your spinal cord 2.5 inches. Yikes, not good. Major corollary study shows that when your neck looks like this, your life expectancy drops to 63 years old. That's a big deal. So we do not want your spine to go from here to here. So the joints is the second half of this study. Because if the bone's in the wrong position, obviously that's bad. How do we get the bone back to the right position? And most importantly is how do we keep it there? Well, we need to look at arthritis in ligaments. So the way that God made your body is your bones are held together by ligaments. So my fists are going to be bones, and we're going to let this pin be a ligament. Now you have 7 ligaments from front to back in your spine that hold your bones in the right position. Those ligaments allow you to bend and lift and twist and move, and your vertebra to come back to the correct position, which is not stretching your spinal cord and not pinching your nerve. Problem is, when we have that whiplash, we rip those ligaments, and that could be a whiplash, and that whiplash again could be picking something up really heavy, and it rips the ligament in your back. So when you rip those ligaments, now something really bad happens to your spine. Your vertebrae are able to shear the disc and grind the disc. When that happens, your body lays down more bone to restabilize your spine because your ligaments aren't doing their job anymore. That new bone growth, guess what that's called? Arthritis. Arthritis has nothing to do with how old you are. It only has to do with how old your injury is. So when we look at your x-rays, I'm going to show you something here in a second, we are going to be looking for ripped ligaments specifically. And as a chiropractor, obviously we want to unpinch the nerve. So we want to move the bone back to the right position and unpinch the nerve. But if your bone's been in the wrong position for 15 or 20 years, if all I do is move the bone back, but I don't work on the muscles, ligaments, and tendons to restabilize your spine, within a couple of days, what happens to that bone? Right back in the wrong position, smashes the nerve. So let me ask you, if you were in my position, what would you do? You would become a professional, the best in the world, at moving the bone back and restabilizing the muscles, ligaments, and tendons. So let me show you what that looks like. All right, when we shoot an x-ray of the neck, side x-ray of the neck, again facing this way, most people that come in that have had any type of a whiplash in their neck, we're going to see a rip of their ligament. And let me show you what that rip looks like. In the back part of your vertebrae, you have a very thick ligament. It's like a thick piece of duct tape called your PLL, your posterior longitudinal ligament. And that puppy's job is to hold these vertebrae into position here. When you have a whiplash, what you wind up doing is ripping that PLL, and it's really easy to see because the backs of these vertebrae don't line up. Now, This is the most common version of this. Your x-rays might look a little bit different because there's a couple other ligaments that you can rip. We're going to save those for another video. But in this position, what's happening is these vertebrae right here, we've ripped that ligament, and whatever nerve this is going to is going to be smashed. Very predictable. Specifically, that nerve goes to a little organ in your throat called your thyroid. If I find a whiplash right here, I'm going to expect your metabolism to be hurting. I'm going to expect you to be somebody who has a hard time sleeping. You're going to have a hard time waking up feeling like you got sleep. You're going to have all the symptoms of thyroid, but you might be the type of person that gets your thyroid test back and your thyroid numbers are normal, but you have a symptom of thyroid because it's a nerve issue. Cool. When we look at a whiplash in the lower part of the neck down here, these are the nerves that are going to be going to your heart. Up top, these nerves are going to be going to headaches. And I really want to point out here that this top bone up here, when that's in the wrong position, we start to see this magic thing called ADD, specifically in children. Adults can have it too, but specifically in children. So I want to show you something really cool about the low back. The low back, you have this thing called coupled motion. So when you laterally bend from side to side, your vertebrae actually rotate to come underneath and support you in that movement. When we find people that have disc issues, we almost always find that their coupled motion is broken down, and that is something that we restore with a chiropractic adjustment. So this is an x-ray of a 36-year-old woman that had a pretty significant whiplash, and because of that, she has arthritis now, similar to what you'd see with an older person, as well as pinched nerves that are affecting her thyroid and causing infertility. You can see here she wants this normal curve where the green line is, but hers isn't. She's the red line. The bones come up, you can see these lines don't match up, so there's a torn ligament, and because of that, these little spikes, that's arthritis, right? It took 30 years to grow that. These nerves go to the thyroid. Her low back, her pelvis is fairly level, but her spine is anything but straight. Because of that, these nerves right here going to her female organs are all smashed and pinched. So this is going to be an example of somebody who would be in an intensive corrective care plan. So when we look at your x-rays, we're going to be looking for areas of potential whiplash that tore ligaments and are causing pinched nerves.